Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to a crazier than usual ComicBase live stream, and that's saying something. Hey, I am your host, Pete Bickford. I'm glad that the little credit came up right underneath my name, so it reminded me. But welcome here. We're for the next hour or so. We're going to be talking about comics, ComicBase, and a bit of a special here. We're going to be talking about a goofy little $129 network PC and whether you can run the world's biggest database of comic books acceptably on something that costs about this, what a nice dinner out would cost with, with maybe some wine. But anyway, thank you for everyone for joining us. Let me check here. We've got our mod in the house, Mr. Gregory Hecht is with us, and welcome everyone. Hopefully the sound's okay for folks. I got one comment saying the sound was a bit tinny, but well, let me know in the chat whether we're doing okay or not. Richard Scott, first in the house, welcome, and good to see you, and welcome Mike from Vancouver here. Sunny and 75. I'm jealous. It's hot as Hades out here in Tennessee. Tim, welcome. Canadian Smoke is joining everyone from Beloit, Wisconsin. And Richard says I get to see a free screen of Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny after this. Let us know what you thought. I'm really interested in an unvarnished opinion of that one. I've gotten a number of people in the kind of like the professional critic sphere who've weighed in on it, but dying to know what us civilians think. Aloha to Fred Slota, and I guess we're still dealing with Canadian haze all around here. Let's see here. Ed Billiot from Richmond, California is in the house. Xanadu Comics from Seattle. And let's see here. Greg, our mom wants to remind us that friend of the show, Joel Tripwire Meadows. Yeah, that's an awesome middle name. It's like calling your kid Danger. I'm Joel Tripwire Meadows. But anyway, you may he has a Zoop campaign that just launched at Sherlock Holmes and the Empire Buildings. I know he's been working on that project forever. I remember him telling me, "Yeah, I've got an idea for a Sherlock book." A comic probably 7-8 years ago, and I'm glad to see that's finally coming around. So if you want to back him, please head over to Zoop and back that campaign, everyone. Kenneth B is in the house as well, and Mike Wagner from Ohio, and who else here? House band. Fred says the sound is good, excellent. Rob Weinberg, glad you could join us here. Scott Connor, and sorry, I see you had a good time. Glad to see you a good time at Heroes Con. Sorry, I missed you here. Well, I'm always happy to run into people from the show in real life. It's like, you guys are actually, believe it or not, kind of a delightful bunch. So anyway, sorry I missed you there, but hopefully we'll catch up in the future at some point. By the way, if you guys are interested, it looks like I think that's, if I recognize the call sign, I believe that's Ed from up in Canada just joined us. I will be going to Comic-Con in a couple, good Lord, is it just about 3 weeks from now out in San Diego? I'm looking forward to that a lot. I'll try to do some kind of, I don't know, blogging of some sort from the show. I remember Comic-Con being an absolute concrete bunker with an overloaded cell service outside. So maybe things have changed, because I'm seeing people much more successfully live streaming from places like the San Diego Convention Center now. So maybe it's possible. It'd be cool to do a show from there at some point. But we're not doing the user group in person this year. I wasn't able to get that scheduled in time, but I would love to do something from you, just kind of give a taste of San Diego. I really hope it's back to normal. I miss that show so much. I can't tell you. Anyway, so a bit of news in the world, and then on to our featured presentation, which is about the $129 Ace Magician mini PC, and letting you know about that one. By the way, if you guys have questions for me, please post them in the chat to @ComicBase TV, and I'll hit them as we go. I'm trying some new technical things on the show today, so be forgiving as much as you possibly can. We've moved cameras around and all sorts of goofy things like that, so hopefully things will work. We'll see. We're going to play it we're gonna do it live. All right. So anyway, the ComicBase news is we just pushed ComicBase 23.3. This is our Q2 update for ComicBase 2023. It's a required update, which is to say it's one that's going to bug you to download it if you check for updates before it allows you to download new content updates. The reason is because we added some new things in the update stream, in particular creator aliases, so that we can help standardize creator names. And we need to be able to get you guys on the same kind of page we are as far as what to expect from the update, file as you download it. So if you've been getting any kind of errors as you've been downloading it, and it says, just anything goofy about connections not being there or whatever else, make sure you're on the current version of the software first. So go under in ComicBase, go to Internet, say check for updates. It should warn you that there's a ComicBase 23.3 update, give you a little highs and lows of what's new about the whole thing. Hit the download button. It takes just a minute or two to get you to that version. And when you go under help about ComicBase, it should say you're running ComicBase 2023 version 23.3. And then you will have it there. In terms of new features in 23.3, it's most of the story is behind the scenes in terms of the content, but there are some cool things. Books can have decimals now. The picture grid display is significantly faster than it was before. So, all the speed ups we've done in the past, we've improved the picture drawing in the grid as well, so that got even faster. A number of things for the update as far as how item titles get pushed out and everything got done much better and so forth. So definitely worth doing. Do download that when you get a chance. All right, so let's see what else is going on here. Oro Viejo says hello from Iowa. It must be, I assume you're traveling because I believe Oro's usually from Minneapolis. But okay, so all right, so that is it for the news of ComicBase type stuff. Let's get on to what our main thing is. Now, let me see if I can get over to our overhead camera, which is now the behind my shoulder camera. All right, so a couple of weeks ago in the mail, I got a box, and this box is so small. As you see my hand here for size reference, normal sized hand, pack of cards. If you're wondering about that whole thing, I'll just put that there. This thing popped up in the mail. Is literally just in an envelope. They didn't even need to put it in a proper shipping box, and the thing weighs under a pound. This was the Ace Magician mini PC, which I saw advertised for $149 with a $20 off coupon a number of weeks ago, and I thought, geez Louise, how can I say no to this? It's because from a standpoint from computer specs, it had a lot to recommend it. It was an Intel 12th generation processor. Now, that being said, Intel 12th generation refers to a large range of processors. So they're using the same kind of underlying lithography process, but they vary wildly in how many cores they have and the capabilities. This is the network, the N95 processor, not to be confused with an N95 mask, but this one has all of four cores running 4 threads. So this is the lowest of the low in terms of how much oomph you're getting from your processor. That being said, it does move relatively fast. So it has kind of a base speed of I believe around 2 gigahertz, but a turbo speed, which is to say when it senses it needs to turn on the power, it can up to about 3.4 gigahertz, which is pretty respectable, all things considered. It puts you to where PCs were 5 years ago on mainstream desktops. That being said, I've always been banging the drum about how your processor is usually not your problem when you're running a program, certainly like ComicBase. It's usually all about your disk drive. And one thing this thing does pretty darn well is, even though it only has 8 gigs of RAM, it has a 256 gig SSD, and it's an NVMe SSD, which is to say it's soldered right on the motherboard into the PCI Express bus. And even though it's no world beater of a card, of an SSD at all, it's about the slowest NVMe SSD you'll ever find. That also means it moves at about 10 or 20 times the speed of a normal disk drive. So with the basic specs here of 3.4 gigahertz, Intel Alder Lake processor, 8 gigs of RAM, a 256 gig SSD, and it also claims to support up to 3 4K displays. It'll run USB 3.0 if you want to add on storage or connect peripherals to it for $129. How could I not say let's give this thing a shot. So anyway, I was pretty excited when I got this thing. I'm going to do basically a faked unboxing now. Which is to say, I've already unboxed it before. I've hooked it up. I've installed ComicBase on it, and I don't want to go through those steps in the middle of a live stream. So I'm just going to show you what I got when I open up the box. So first of all, as small as this box is, again, this is my hand. So I get in again to frame here. This is my hand. This is juggle it into frame here. This is the PC over here someplace. Really hard to do this stuff in reverse over your left shoulder. But anyway, I'm going to say the box is about 4 inches by 4 inches by 3 inches tall. Let's go ahead and open it up here. I'm going to be sacrificing a little bit of sound quality for the sake of getting in front of the camera end here. So we open this thing up here. And this is not a super high-end presentation. There's the PC right inside here. And here is the actual PC. This thing is tiny. Let's go ahead and bring the pack of cards in here now. And now it's bigger than the pack of cards. Here's the thickness of this thing. Absolutely. I mean, this thing is making my Apple TV look thunky. Just now to flip this guy around here, here's our 3 USB 3.0 ports. Out the back here, this is actually kind of crazy to me. You've got your power, and you've got 2 1 gigabit USB. I'm sorry, LAN ports, RJ45 Ethernet connections. Why 2? Good Lord only knows. I guess the chipset gave the free headers, and it was only going to cost them 20 cents in parts or something. So why not have 2? So they did it. It also comes with wireless. I want to say it's only like wireless N support. The wireless, I'm actually going to say, is a little bit on the pokey side on this one. The power adapter on here is just a straight little. It's like the sort of thing you charge your phone with almost. Little 9-volt power jack in the back. And along the back here, you've got 3 HDMI 2.0 ports. I believe they're 2.0, might be 1.4. In any case, they're perfectly fine for driving a 4K monitor at a decent resolution. So I'm going to plug this in as best as I can, power it up, and let's see where we go on this whole thing. Now, you might notice all the cables dangling from my desk because right before showtime, it was plugged in and powered up. So I'm going to do my best to reconnect it, and not mess anything up. Let's see how I do. All right, and if I got everything hooked in right, that by the way is my postal scale behind this, just for just because I don't have a lot of extra desk space. Let's just go and power that guy up, and let's see how it's going to go to boot this up. I should see it popping up in just a second here. All right, yeah, it's just come alive. So let me switch over to that one, and now we are on that PC. All right, so and I'm gonna so you might have wondered one thing if you're like really geeking out on this one. Why were there 2 HDMI connections I made right now? And the answer for that, excuse me a second. The answer for that is right across from like most old guys, I'm you get to be far-sighted, which is to say, a certain point when things are close to you, they get out of focus on you. So, like most people over the age of 40 or so, which I definitely am one. And so what I have just out of sight is I actually have a big old monitor, off my desk. It's like a 42-inch 4K TV I picked up for like $300 at Costco. That as acting as a as a big monitor, so I can basically do the show with my glasses off. So that's what the I'm using one port to drive the one port to drive the computer input into the switch here, and I'm using another port to drive that big monitor. So that's what that is. Let me switch that monitor on so I can see what it's doing here and not be staring at the tiny, tiny window in my broadcast monitor. So give me just a second for that. And let's see if it got it. Boom, it did. Okay. And matter of fact, I'm gonna zoom out here so you can actually see what my setup looks like a little bit here. Give me just a second here. I'm gonna unkey myself. Going to switch back to the view of the overset, and I'm going to zoom out. So this is my office from the other end. So in case any of you guys wondered. Come on. All right. So that's that. And now I have to plug my camera back in because I just managed to peel it off. So this is going well. Excuse me just a moment, folks. Pay no attention to the hand here. Matter of fact, I'm going to switch back to this camera so you can see me messing with stuff. Give me just a second here. Yeah, another practical live stream pro tip here, guys. Never lock down your setup and then try to undo it live on the stream to show wider views. It's not going to work, people. So do yourself a favor, don't do it. All right, so just screwing the camera back into its mount. Great, that did work. Let's focus it back at the desk, which also worked. This is a fascinating video, isn't it? All right. I can now switch over to that camera so you can see what that looks like. All right. And now let's zoom back in on the PC. Go down a bit. All right. All right. We're going to call that a win. All right. Because honestly, that's about all it makes sense to show you at this point, because everything else, I'm just going to show you how the thing works when you're actually working with the PC. All right. So let me get hooked back in so I can hear myself. All right. And let's put this thing through its paces here. All right. So, all right. It does not come with a picture of Bob the Minion on it. By the way, one thing I believe in very, very strongly is when you're going to go and fire up any new PC, it's very important to choose its name properly. And this, me and Neil Gaiman believe that there's definitely power in words. And you want to choose a name for your PC that reflects its personality, your hopes, your dreams for it, and that lets you shape its personality, or at least how you're going to think about it as the days go on. I chose Bob the Minion because the thing's so darn small that if it's either going to be one of two things: useless, kind of cute and underfoot, or it's going to be my bestest buddy. So I'm hoping that Bob is the right name for it. By the way, one other thing that's worth showing on this whole thing, let me go ahead and turn off the key over here so you don't have two of me. It also comes with this strange little device in the bottom of the box, along with a couple of screws in a package right here. And I'm wondering, what the heck is that for? What it's for is this PC is so darn small. This is actually a mini VESA bracket, which is meant to hook on. You can actually, on the back of any standard monitor is a set of 4 ports that hooks on your monitor stand or whatever else. This will actually allow you to mount it to the back of your monitor stand and just run the cables right behind your monitor, essentially converting your monitor into a smart PC. Kind of like, it's like roll your own Mac, roll your own not Mac Mini, but iMac. That sort of thing. But yeah, it literally doesn't need to take up any desk space whatsoever, which is, in a way good, because you can see from the layout of the whole thing, the cables kind of sprawl out in all directions. Unless you've got this thing just literally dumped behind something, it's actually a bit of a mess routing a lot of cables from it. You can do a little better if you run with the Ethernet, without the Ethernet. But that being said, I did find that my Ethernet in the office here is running like AC. And it's basically Ethernet 5 is what they would have called it these days. It's not the very, very, very fastest, most recent Ethernet, but it's a couple generations faster than the one that came built in with this thing. This thing's, like I say, a bit on the pokey side. All right, Steve Desner asks, don't know how much 2 LAN ports can allow 1 Ethernet bonding. Yeah, you could do it. It's just funny in a way, because you could use the 2 Ethernet ports to act as almost as good as a 2 gigabit port. If you're gonna worry about that, though, you kind of wonder, why didn't you just put a 2.5 gigabit port in the back and the whole thing? It's just funny on a PC. It's just so focused on budget that you would use what is almost like a network server feature. I think it was there to kind of sell the idea of this thing being a network PC. And he also points out load balancing, which again is almost like a server kind of configuration you would use on the whole thing. You could port gang the two things together, but yeah, nothing to say. Mike Wagner says no comic books in sight. Yeah, the comic books are actually behind and to the right of me. It's if you were to look off on my desk, going that way is where the wall of books is, and the majority of my collection is actually underneath me on the previous floor or above me, on a different floor in the back of the house. But yeah, my office is wall to wall music gear and reference books and things like that. So, and monitors, lots of monitors. All right, so let's see here. Wow, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out what Mike is talking about here. Mike Beam says, Pete talks, allow me to tell my own choice of going small. I've done sound and lights for rock and country and western bands years ago, so I've been a bit of an audio snob. Going all the way back to a Denon 7.1 system, trying to duplicate a wall of sound. Done it earlier in life, many speakers and amps later, still haven't succeeded. Well, could buy a pair of Eclipse speakers, an Eclipse subwoofer, and a small itty-bitty Duke Class D amp, my friends. It's like a concert hall now. Well, nice to know. Yeah, it's funny because I'm also kind of a stereo geek and the whole thing. My living room has got just the 5.1s, speakers on the whole thing. But man, you can just tell that like the shape of the technology these days is like, well, couldn't we just build all that into a sound bar? And some of it is impossible from a practical standpoint, but more and more is people are eschewing the wires and just the cables and the speakers everywhere, and just clean looks. Man, there's a lot to be said for that. All right, so I think we're just about caught up with things. Let's go ahead and turn our attention back to things over here. All right, so back on our PC here. Here's Bob. And let's put Bob through his paces. I'm going to turn him in here. I've got ComicBase 2023 store on. First of all, when you want to evaluate the performance of any PC, a couple things you probably ought to start with. So I'm going to open up Bob here. By the way, I'm going to detour just for a second and show you guys one of my favoriteest tips ever for just having your PC not suck, just to live with. If this thing comes pre-installed with Windows 11 Pro, which is amazing. I mean, that's Windows 11 Pro. The license alone should cost more than the PC. So I gotta think this thing is gray market as all get out in terms of how they made this happen. I don't know how a U.S. licensor could have ever done that legally, but that's between them and Microsoft. I'm not complaining. The copy registered just fine. There was no problems with it. It installed in seconds. It was really no big deal to get this thing up and running. When you have a brand new Windows 11 PC, the very first things I would do, and I would suggest consider doing them yourself. Down here in the taskbar, you'll notice I'm using Windows 11, but all my icons are over on the bottom left-hand side, where God and Fitz law intended them to be. Because instead of trying to, it just basically in a previous episode I went into the whole concept of Fitz law and how basically when you can peg things to at least one corner and preferably two corners, the effective target size you have to acquire any particular icon on them goes down dramatically versus the idiotic thing that they were doing, and they were aping an idiotic thing Apple was doing of floating them in the middle of a taskbar. So you always have to kind of like, okay, parse down to the bottom and then go, was it that one? Was it that one? Was that one? I think it was somewhere in the middle here. And it takes forever compared to the idea of it's the fourth icon from the left, boom, So anyway, I would definitely suggest to everyone, right click on your taskbars if you're using Windows 11, go down to taskbar settings. And then when you go down here to taskbar behaviors, have a look over this guy here and consider strongly whether or not you are happy with the default of this being centered, or if you wouldn't like it better with moving all the icons to the left. I'm just going to say bottom left, just like they had it in Windows 10 and below. I gotta say that is the for the win. At least I would say that. Another one's a little bit more obscure is make sure you show your computer itself on the desktop like we're doing up here. Let me go ahead and launch Magnifier here so it's a little bit easier to show some things off. Not sure why I don't have Magnifier auto launching, but there we go. All right, so having your computer itself appear on your desktop makes it a lot faster just to move around your computer, going to disk drives and so forth, and it just gives you a nice base of operations, for calling your computer home. In order to get there, this used to be the default behavior all the way through XP, and I think they took it out somewhere around, oh, good Lord, somewhere in one of the builds of Windows 7. It stopped being the default behavior, showing the computer on the desktop, and they hit it pretty good as far as where that setting is kept. Where you find that setting now is go under Start, type themes and related settings, and now down here under related settings, we get to desktop icon settings right down here. Click that, and then we have this ancient looking control panel, because it's an ancient looking control panel, where you can turn on all the things that used to be standard on your computer. Whether you find control panel useful to put on your desktop, that's up to you. I've always found that to be clutter, but at least showing your computer, definitely your recycle bin and your network. I've always found if you use any kind of network at all, um, um, having those available on your desktop, just it makes it much easier to move around, because then anytime you want to just go back and say, hey, I know it's on my C drive, my D drive, or whatever else, you just double click on your computer. Here's all your machine, here's your network locations. You don't have to kind of hunt backwards through the file explorer and kind of scan up the directory tree to find home base and so forth. And anyway, those are my bonus tips. Anytime I'm dealing with a brand new PC, I always set those things on. All right, so here we have Bob. I've installed ComicBase with it, and when you want to evaluate the performance of a PC, I mean, you can start with basic things. So like, okay, well, so when I launch the thing, how long does it take to do anything? So here's launching ComicBase. Here's one version back. I'm going to eat my own words here because this is actually one older, and that wasn't too bad. It took a couple 3 seconds to launch. As I use it, everything's running basically as fast as I would expect it to. If I want to, click on a picture and make it bigger, that all works fine. Double click to edit an issue. There it is. I mean, I'm not really seeing any, real delays on anything I would think to do. If I want to, highlight a bunch of issues, hit a 1 to put them all in stock. It did it. Here's 2. I'm hitting the 2 key to put 2 items each of these in stock. I'm going to hit 0 to move them all out of stock. Basically, that works as fast as I could ever hope for it to work. Only in the real extreme cases when I want to, do that to, 5,000 issues at once or something like that, do I start noticing any, particular lag versus my i9 running at 4.8 gigahertz or whatever I've got my main desktop doing. The machine that cost, literally probably 15 times what this one cost. That's about the only time I actually start noticing a speed difference doing the basic things in ComicBase. Now let's add a few things to stock here. I'm just going to go to a couple titles. I'm going to randomly add a couple issues. All right. And now let's run some reports. Okay. All right. So now let's go to our reports menu over here, and let's go up here, and let's start with just doing a basic collection report. All right, here it is, collection report, standard things over here. I'm going to hit preview. If I was really clever, I would have set up the printer before the show. Boom. It was basically as fast as I could ever wish this to be. I mean, it's, I couldn't honestly, if this was a blind test and I was saying, is this my main desktop or is this like the little $129 PC? From that, I couldn't have told you. Now let's talk about some things that you can do in ComicBase where I could tell you that this one is definitely slower than my major, my main rig. So the things that take the most time in ComicBase, the most expensive operations, as things go, are typically, you find them here under the File Tools menu in particular. So if you go under File Tools, and if I say Rebuild Lists, there's some options here where I can do things like, okay, rebuild my series information, which series I own. The item information is a great one because that forces ComicBase to go through all 9, almost basically close to 1 million in issues, parse through all the, recalculate all the totals, recalculate all the artist credits through the names and so forth. That takes quite a while. And then if I really want to go to town, if I check off rebuild the list of contributors, storylines, and notes, on my main PC, if I were to run all of these operations, the whole thing would take 15, 16 minutes. And if I had it recompute all the picture information, it would take well over an hour. Let's just go ahead right now, and I'm just gonna let's start with the first 2. I'm just gonna say rebuild on these guys right here. Zoom out a little bit so you can see what it's doing. So updating the title information, not bad at all. Why is it not bad? And it's not bad because we've got enough RAM. You've got 8 gigs on this thing, so it's enough to get the basic stuff done, and it's also enough. It's a fast enough disk so that everything where it needs to go and check the disk to see if something is there is also going to happen pretty quickly. So those 2 operations, again, what was that, 10, 12 seconds? I mean, really no time at all. Now, if I hit something a little heavier, like rebuilding the item information, Um, this one is a little worse than what my main PC would do. And now let's talk about how we'd analyze the speed other than just kind of like how does it feel. And your number one tool when you want to break in a new PC like this and just kind of see what's going on, like what's performing well, what isn't, is go up in here and type Task Manager. So what I'm doing is I'm clicking on my start menu and you just start typing TASK. That'll bring up Task Manager. Task Manager tells you what's really going on with your PC. And the first thing that most people get when they pull up Task Manager is they're like, what the heck? I didn't launch any programs. This should just be ComicBase running. How come I'm seeing all this stuff? What is all this stuff? Because it's not uncommon at all to have 100 or more programs running on your PC all the time. Now, most of them, or you'll see, is they're burning 0% of your CPU, or so little that it makes no difference. And when you look at them and you say, what are all these things? They have really helpful names like, oh, well, service host UDK user service, underscore A852BE. Well, of course, the UDK, service, or the agent host for agent activation runtime. The worst part is the way Windows is composed. This stuff is normal. There's nothing wrong with all the stuff running. It's meant to work like this. And these are all it's little things that are running in the background, which let it do things like talking to different drivers on your network. Windows Security Health Service. It periodically checks the state of your Windows files and make sure that things are running properly. The Clipboard User Service, which I believe has something to do with sharing the clipboard. If you're copying and pasting between different platforms. Most people don't even know what any of these mean. I'm probably getting half of them wrong. The Spooler Subsystem app with a little printer icon next to it. When you print when you just hit print, right, and if you're printing like a 50-page report, you actually don't want your computer waiting there doing nothing else until the 50th page has rolled off the printer. You want you to be able to say print and then say, okay, yeah, it's I've got it. Go ahead and tell me when it's done. I'll just wait for the printer. And then you want to be off using your thing. Well, a thing called a print spooler is running in the background all the time, which says, okay, I'm taking the data from the computer. As soon as the printer is ready to take the data, I'm feeding it the next page, the next page, the next page until it's done. I'll do this. I'm like a little program running in the background all the time. I'll do this until it's done. You'll notice it's running at 0% because I'm not actually printing anything right now. And yet the service still has to sit there doing nothing until it's time to do something. If I were to hit print, then suddenly you see that start taking a little bit of space. Now, when you're looking at your PC over here and back on my PC, so let's see, here's ComicBase. And it's currently grinding through the comic issue information. It's sifting through, all the A's right now. It got done with the books while I was yapping and so forth. And it's, again, doing a lot of calculations, a lot of database work, to kind of clean up all the information in all the 1.1 million comic records that are in the whole thing. And then they'll do on all the way through newspapers and everything else. And as you look through this one, and here's the system task information. Very interesting to say, okay, so what's my computer doing right now? And so you say, well, what's it busy on, and where is it? Where's the time going? So the first thing you'd notice here, if you're looking in Task Manager, is at the very top you see, okay, 59% of my CPU is in use. And if you click on this, you can sort it by what tasks are using the most. Now, good news is ComicBase, which is the program I'm running, it's the only one I think of myself as running right now, is occupying 51% of that 58%. Well, where's the other 7% going, right? Well, your task manager itself right now is taking a couple of percent. The thing that lets me see all the other processes, that's taking a little bit. The desktop window manager, the thing that allows Windows to manage all the open, the open windows that are on my desktop, is taking a little bit. Sidekick is taking a very little bit. It's got a chance to start up, and it's probably checking a few things on the servers, making sure there's no new update yet, and so forth. 0.2%, 0.7%, not enough to get excited about. Dropbox actually is funny because when you first start up your system, if you're running Dropbox can be a monster. It can take 30% of your CPU for the first couple minutes you start up, as it looks over everything is a shared file of yours and grinds like crazy to figure out whether you have the latest copy or not. But anyway, when you're looking at the overall state of this PC right now, you'll notice that, okay, it actually is using a pretty heavy amount of the CPU. Now, if you were to do the same thing right now on your own CPU, assuming you don't have a network PC, you probably, if you kicked off a rebuild of the issue information, my guess is you wouldn't see that thing taking more than 20-30% of your CPU at any given time, because um, ComicBase can only effectively use a couple of your CPU threads at once. There's the main task, that is, driving the user interface, that's interacting with the database and so forth. And sometimes it can spool off other tasks to do things in the background while the main thing is running, but not often. It's not entirely a single thread application, but it's not like a massively parallel application like, say, Photoshop. Like Photoshop is the king of, and they have very, very complicated programming threads with very, very good programmers who work very, very hard to make it so it can work this way. But if you are running Photoshop and you set up a bunch of actions up that say load up an image, run a Gaussian blur across it, do a sharpen, and so forth, all those things will be run on as many processors as your machine has, if it possibly can. And that's how Photoshop achieves its amazing speeds while manipulating so many pixels. Almost all other programs are 1-2 threads, maybe a couple more, maybe, if they're really trying hard. And that's very much typical, which is why when you're looking at evaluating a computer's performance for desktop use, as opposed to, say, for graphic compression or something like that, video compression tends to be the most multi-threaded thing on the planet. So that is atypical in terms of how it uses your processor. Desktop applications, very much, it's all about you'd almost rather have 1 or 2 threads running very fast than have a whole bunch of threads running somewhat slower in order to get the fastest desktop performance. And that's very typical for what's going on with ComicBase right now. So here you have the world's most underpowered processor, and it's got, it's 61, 60% load on the whole thing, but almost all that load is dedicated to the one main thing that's going on. Very little is going on with background stuff right now. So it's actually performing decently. It's not, again, this is the cheapest processor known to man right now, and it's running, by the way, this whole thing runs with no fan. It doesn't take anything to get this thing running, this thing going. And it's doing a phenomenal amount of compute and database work right now. So I mean, it's not doing easy stuff. It's burning a decent amount of the available memory. It's pumping the stuff through the disk at a decent clip. Again, most of what's doing right now, you'll see is CPU bound. In other words, it's crunching through all those nodes. It's comparing a lot of things. It's doing a lot of essentially mental tasks, as opposed to stuff that just has it writing to the disk a lot. It's not super memory intensive. So remember, this thing has 8 gigs of RAM. We're only using 121 megs of it right now, and virtually no network right now. So when you sit there and say, what's it bound by? You refer to something, a computer's being bound, say processor bound or disk bound or memory bound. You say, well, what's the gating factor? What's keeping it from going faster? And the answer is, right now, yeah, we're not, we're largely CPU bound. In other words, if we want to make this faster, we would add a larger, faster CPU to it. And that's actually rare. It typically, you'd be disk bound. So if you try this on your own machine, especially if your computer has a traditional disk drive, not uncommon at all to see 100% disk utilization. And so everything is waiting for the disk to be done so it can do the next thing on, using the processor, loading up the next chunk of data or so forth. That's very typical when we get customers with older PCs calling in for help, because this thing is built on a small and by NVMe standards, kind of a slowish solid state disk drive. But because it's built on that, it's burning 2% of the disk. It's barely doing any work on the disk at all right now. It's all about the processor right now. But even then, I'm going to say, all things considered, it's doing okay. It's almost done with the comics. It'll be done with the magazines and the newspapers, in a couple more minutes. And this is about the hardest thing that I can throw at it from the perspective of running ComicBase. So it's not doing badly. Now let's talk about what would make this do badly. And when you're looking at your own computer, what's probably making your own computer do badly, if your computer's doing badly. Now let's go back to our task manager here to see the information. Now, if you open up your task manager, you probably, and let's say you're running something like Norton or you're running like McAfee or any of these other antivirus things. Right now, this thing is just running the basic Windows antivirus stuff, which is called Windows Defender. And let's see if we can find that one right now. It's called Windows Defender uses a thing called anti-malware service executable to do its job. And it's funny because look at this right now. ComicBase, which is the one app we think of ourselves as having open, is using 121 megas of RAM. Anti-malware service executable is using 147 megs of RAM. Now, again, this is still pretty small amounts, all things considered, but these are the two biggest users of my computer's memory right now. I'm going to say, yeah, this is the Windows desktop itself right now. But yeah, so the built-in Windows antivirus service is the most. I'm sorry, the very biggest thing that's running using memory on my computer right now is Dropbox. But Microsoft Edge, which is not even open, I did not open an Edge window, is using 139 megs of RAM right now. God only knows how. The integration of Edge into the operating system is kind of bizarre, and it can't be uninstalled with current versions of Windows. But anyway, but memory isn't my problem right now. Even though this thing only has 8 gigs of RAM, it's got plenty. We're not running out of memory at all. And notice also network barely ticking over, disk barely ticking over, all about the CPU. All right. So where would this thing go to hell, right? Why might your machine be going to hell, and what would make this machine go to hell? And the number one thing that would make it go to hell in terms of performance is your antivirus software. So antivirus software is important. But I'm also very much of the opinion that nothing can save you if you're the kind of person who clicks on attachments that are sent to you by foreign princes that are promising you new inheritances or free trips to Disneyland or medical miracles or whatever else. I mean, if you're the kind of person who clicks that kind of stuff, you're doomed. I mean, you will eventually get tricked into clicking one too many times, and you will get got in terms of getting a virus on your machine. So the number one thing that we look for in our own place over here, I'm gonna go to the main camera here in just a second, just to give ourselves a break. When I'm looking to advise people about how to make their machines faster, the number one thing that's actually burning your computer's performance in most cases is your antivirus software. It does this in a couple of different ways. First of all, your antivirus software almost certainly has what's called active protection, which means that every time it uses a file, and every time it opens anything at all on your machine, it goes, it virus scans it, checks against a database of known viruses, or tries to use machine learning to recognize a certain pattern that looks suspicious. It intercepts every read and write operation on your disk to see, well, does this look legit or does it look suspicious, and so forth. And all this stuff can essentially tax your computer's performance to the point where I've seen Alienware laptops that cost $4,000 perform like they're running Windows 98 on a 20-year-old machine. Just absolutely pathetic how much burden the antivirus software, if you allow all the default things to be left on, and you use a lot of files, you do a lot of just working with things, your computer's performance in many cases is just leveled, and you can see that reflected even if you go to your computer and say, yeah, temporarily switch off my antivirus. You can go into Task Manager and you'll see that it's still got 12 processes running, and they're still eating 30% of your CPU and 40% of your disk at all times, even when they say they're turned off. Antivirus software just in general lies to you, which is why if you're ever having a really bad performance problem, temporarily don't turn off, but temporarily uninstall your antivirus software and see if your performance doesn't get just much better. And if it does, consider a different antivirus package. Look, I'm very sympathetic to the idea that you want to be protected. I really am, but my bottom line is the antivirus solution can't be worse than the virus problem. In other words, if you'd be better off being infected in terms of being able to use your machine to get work done, then your antivirus it's too much. It's not doing the job efficiently enough, and you need to try something else. And the worst thing you possibly do is have 2 or 3 antivirus suites, because, some people think, well, one Band-Aid's good, having a Band-Aid, a tourniquet, and a gas mask on is even better. No, it doesn't work that way. It just, your machine just chokes to death, on all the different layers of scanning and protection and memory, and everything that is being used up on the whole thing, and you can never get any actual work done. So, in general, what I would tell people, especially if they're having performance issues, is look to your antivirus. It's the number one cause of bad performance, and then do two things which ironically are going to sound like they're at odds at each other. First thing I would do is do a full check for viruses. I mean, it is possible. It does happen once in a while, especially if you're one of those people who clicks on everything, that it's possible you've got some kind of virus or Trojan or something that's eating your performance. That, I'm going to say, is the 1 in 20 case. The 19 in 20 case is that your antivirus itself is just so heavy that it's wiping out much of your computer's available processing power. And that particularly hits you when you have a low spec processor like this one. All right, so let's talk about threads and cores and all that nonsense. And what does all that really mean? So, all right. So we'll see right now that ComicBase got done. We're now down to burning 11% CPU. Everything's essentially done. If you get to the point when desktop window manager is the only thing burning a CPU, then you're golden, right? And as you can see here, this thing went and cleaned up 65,000 notes, storylines, artists, and if I wanted to essentially run the last of those cleanup operations, the storyline things right now to update the creator index, I'm going to say no right now, because I think we've taxed this as much as it makes any sense, just to show that's busy. But that's about the heaviest thing that I could think to do with ComicBase in terms of burning performance, except for the one I'm about to get to. But let's talk about how your antivirus is probably doing you in. So let's go back to our task manager again. And when it's busy, all right, so let's have a look here. Now, right now, I'm running nothing. Essentially, ComicBase is idle. We're doing nothing with it at all right now. Everything on my whole computer is idle, and yet we still see stuff going on. Well, it's executable, not doing a lot, so it's not burning a lot of CPU, but still burning the RAM it has. If I were to copy files, do anything else like that, you'd see the anti-malware service executable start doing stuff. It would start chugging up into the usage part here. Let me kick off something just in Windows to see if I can get that to happen. I'm going to go to Windows Update. And let's, I think there's an update that came out a couple of days ago. If this hasn't been updated automatically, it might find and want to install that one. So let's see here. Check for updates, dooby-dooby-doo. By the way, if you aren't set for this already, definitely suggest, having Windows update your computer, regularly. And by the way, do yourself a favor. The first time it says, I got an update for you, can I install it? Just say yes. Take the hit right away. It's better than being that person who says, nah, get around to it later. And I see those people 6 months later, they're still clicking the, I'll get around to it later thing. And the problems just pile up and up and up. No, just take the hit now. So right now it wants to download an update to Windows anti-malware, because again, it's always a thing. All right. And now we'll notice that suddenly task, so we had Windows anti-malware executable was, let's see what's taking up my stuff now. All right. Well, yeah, for a hot second there, anti-malware service executable is up to 12%. And it's already done. One of the reasons I like Windows Defender as antivirus, actually there's a couple, 3 reasons for it. First one is Windows Defender, which is the one that comes with Windows. It regularly wins in the shootouts as far as when they take viruses they intentionally infect PCs and they try to say, well, which things found which viruses. The regular winner is Windows itself. That's number one. Number two, it doesn't cost any money, so free is good. No, I mean, free free gets you in trouble. Free is not good, but all things considered, free is better than not free. But the other thing about it, and the thing I like the best, is it doesn't typically take so much of your computer's resources that it annihilates your computer, unlike, again, half a dozen programs I could name. All right, where those really kill you though is, let's say, remember we talked about that this was a 4-thread 4-core processor, right? It runs pretty fast, but it only runs a couple of things at a time. Well, remember, all your antivirus stuff, and if you're running McAfee or Norton, it has about a dozen things going that are all different kinds of scanners running. All those things want to run at the same time. Well, each of them, if they're running on a background thread, right? So what essentially, if your computer has, four cores, that means it's designed so there's four physical, processors on it. Four threads means that between those four cores, each one of them can only run a single thread, which is they can only run one thing at a time. So if you've got a bunch of things in your to-do list, right? Imagine you have four employees. You can only assign one of them to a job at a single time. Bigger processors, not only have more cores, physically, which is honestly the cores matter very little. The number of threads you can move through is much more important. But it's not uncommon to have 24, 36, active threads running on, processors that that you can get going on a particular high-end desktop PC. So it's like having 36 people working for you that can all work on different jobs one after another, and some of them are faster than others. Just like certain employees are faster than others. But I mean, they can tear through a lot more futzy work if they can spread their attention amongst all the tasks that want their attention than if you only have four employees and they can only do one thing at a time. This processor essentially has four employees. They can do exactly one thing at a time. They can't go on to the next thing until they've wrapped up whatever portion of the work they were working on for the first thing. So if ComicBase says, hey, I need you to open this table and load up a whole bunch of records, it's going to do that. And only when it's done with that is it going to say, all right, who's next? And at that point, anti-malware executable might say, well, hey, I need you to check this file. And it's okay, I'll be right back in a second, goes, checks the file. Well, you quickly exhaust if you've got a lot of people checking a lot of things. And the antivirus stuff is very big at this, of taking your computer essentially off task a lot. Now, if you've got a lot of threads you can dedicate to it, then yeah, you say, okay, fine, I'm going to give up 12 of my computer's threads. Processors can do nothing but service the things that my anti-malware wants to. But if I don't have 12 processors that I can devote to the whole thing, then suddenly you keep on interrupting the main thing to get anything done, and everything gets very, very slow on your computer. Now, this computer in particular has only a limited attention span, which again, if I don't ask it to do a bunch of things at the same time, it's going to do pretty decently. But if I load it down with, my VPN, along with my network scanner, along with my along with my internet scanner, along with my file scanner, along with my make sure I've got the latest update scanner. If that's all going at the same time, everything is just going to be dog slow. And where this really hurts the most. So of all the things I timed it with in terms of installing ComicBase, the thing that it was the slowest at, the thing that is the biggest difference between running this on my regular computer and running it on a new PC, was frankly installing the program itself. So when I went to, in particular, download and install all the pictures for ComicBase, at that point, you saw a really interesting thing happen in the process manager. Is you saw, remember we saw before that the disk was barely kicking over, the memory was about half full, just like it is right now, but you saw that the CPU was about half going where it was going. All right, let's do something now. I'm going to do one thing that I think will stress it out pretty good. And I'm just gonna save a backup file. Now, save a backup file. Why should that be hard at all? All right, so but what I'm gonna change this up a little bit. So let me show it to you two different ways. First of all, I'm just gonna exit, let it do a basic save. And this is actually the good news. So there it's saving. Whoops, darn it. It's probably done before I can see. All right, so you see that disk was at 94%. Look how it was writing, 112 megs per second. And now we're down to 36%. And if I look at it, the whole thing as it was going here. And let me close up this window. This is driving me crazy. I apologize, guys. That was a terrible demo. I'm going to try that one more time because it went by too fast to even show what I meant to show. But let's go ahead and do it again. So as you know right now, when we save a backup file in ComicBase, it does this, by default every time you launch the program, right? So let me go ahead and launch the, I'm going to launch the, that's, okay, so I'm going to launch the program. Oh, sorry. Okay, wrong one. That's beta software. Let's get to the not beta software. All right, so, all right, here we go. Let's pull this up in Task Manager. So, all right, so here we're saving a file. See that disk at 100% there? But again, look, we're moving 65, 70 megs per second. Not bad at all. Compare that to your standard, to your standard drive. And again, the job is done so fast that it's over before it barely starts. All right. And here's ComicBase 2023 for the current version. All right, so all right, now let's go ahead and mix it up a little bit. And now I'm going to do something bad. And I'm going to make the window smaller, just so because I want to pull up the task manager at the same time I bring up ComicBase, so we can see both things at the same time, hopefully. All right, so now I'm just going to do one thing differently. I'm going to go here up under Setup. I'm going to go to Preferences, and I'm going to say compress the backup files to save space. All right, so what am I really asking for here? What I'm saying is take that almost 2 gigabyte database file you've got here, but before you save it, I want you to compress it. And so what that's going to do is it's going to change this from an all disk thing. Like copying a file is just all about like how quickly can I move bytes from one end of the disk to the other. And with an SSD, I can move them pretty damn fast. But when I say compress it, suddenly I'm saying take all the processors you've got available to you right now, because compression is hard, especially if you're compressing it using a very involved algorithm like we do in ComicBase. We're using a very tight compression algorithm because we're going to take that 2 or 3 gigabyte file, we're going to compress it down to about 500 megabytes. All right, now I'm going to compress it, and this is going to happen. All right, so first of all, it makes the copy, and we can see right over there, it's moving the disk. Disk is moving pretty fast, right? And now the disk is done. We've made the copy, but now what's done is in the background, we've spun up a new process, and you can see this. Not using the magnifier here. No, I think we've hidden it. Sorry. Yeah, I guess we hide this process. We don't let you see it. But what's happening in the background right now is suddenly something very different happened. Is the disk is only barely kicking over. It's moving at 5 megs per second. It was moving at 50 a second ago. Because what did it made a copy of the file. It made backup of ComicBase, timestamped at a given time, and now it's compressing that backup, and it's going to throw away the compressed, the uncompressed version when it's done. So now at this point, we're pounding the CPU pretty good. So now we're hitting it with as many processes as it'll let us have. Unfortunately, because this is only a 4-core 4-processor type of thing, it doesn't have a lot of horsepower to give us. And so, first of all, if you were running this on your main desktop, you'd have been done already by the time it took me to have it right now. But because we're running on kind of a again a minimal kind of configuration, we're working awfully hard for this one right now. 70-80% of the CPU is busy just doing this. All right, now I think we can cheat if we look at it right in here. I'm going to look at ComicBase databases. So your ComicBase databases are stored by default inside your documents folder down here. Documents, there's a human computing folder, and there's a folder in there called ComicBase databases. And now you can see what it's doing. All right. And in real time, when I exited, it made a file, this is timestamped of ComicBase database backup at 2023, 6/28, that's the date, at 4:53 p.m. I'm sorry, 4:55 p.m. Now, it made that copy. It was 1.5 gigabytes to start with. And now that it's made the copy, it's trying to compress that file. And you see this file over here, the 7Z file, that stands for 7-zip, is slowly getting larger. And by slowly, I mean slowly, because it's trying to compress that whole thing down, and I just don't have a lot of processor to throw at it. So I'm hitting F5 right now to force it to refresh this thing in real time. But you see that, all right, yeah, we did 1 meg, another meg, another meg. And it's going to keep going like that probably for another 4 or 5 minutes. Again, on a desktop processor, this thing would have been done 5-10 minutes ago, because it just doesn't have the horsepower to throw at it right now. And that's really the part where this PC just kind of falls down, is when you try to do processor intensive things, it hasn't got a lot to give you. And so, it chokes. So let's sum up here on the whole thing, because, I think this one's pretty interesting. I'm going to say, and let me go ahead and kill this key over here. I'm going to say for the for the value of the whole thing. If I were making this as my PC to give to my mom for doing everything she does, word processing, go browse the internet, run QuickBooks, do things like that. I'm gonna say this thing's a slam dunk. I mean, it's got enough space. It's got enough. It's convenient as hell. It runs beautifully. There, I did a check out there. It did not come bundled with any Chinese malware or anything, goofy like that. It's a legit copy of Windows 11 Pro, which is amazing to me. And again, it's 129 bucks. The idea that I can take this thing, mount it to the back of a monitor, and turn my monitor into a smart PC that runs about as well as my main rig would have, 5, 6 years ago. That's phenomenal. So Ace Magician is the name of the company that puts these out. They actually make some upper end ones as well. They actually make some that are much more like, especially have a look at their Ryzen based ones. If I was willing to throw another $200 into the deal, I could have gotten a Ryzen 5800U based processor is much, much more like a conventional desktop, with twice the RAM, twice the disk, but more importantly, probably about 8 times the processor speed. And that's one of the few things that would have made a big difference in this particular thing. But for what normal folks do with normal productivity, man, I gotta say this one is worth looking at. They've offered me some kind of kickback sponsorship thing. I did not turn in because honestly, how much money I gotta make recommend $120 PC even if I wanted to. But that said, yeah, no, look for them there. Do Google Ace Magician. The first guy you're going to find if you just type acemagician.com is some guy who's actually a magician. They have a US website. They're clearly a Chinese company though. So for whatever that's worth to you. But they but I'm gonna say they did a nice job of hitting the sweet spot of value, and the things that matter most for productivity based work, for most people. Would not recommend it for gaming, unless you really like playing. If you like playing solitaire, then go for it. Or Animal Farm or whatever. But if you like playing, Call of Duty or something heavier on the whole thing, no, it's going to be like you're now back in the 90s. It's got built-in graphics and it's tough on that. So I wouldn't do a lot on that score. But for again, the things that most people do most of the time, yeah, the thing is actually worth looking at. So that's my take. All right, so let's have a look at comments because I've been yamming for quite a while. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. All right, let me see. So okay, so okay, so Richard says, how's it handle graphics? Can you do add-ons? This one, yeah, the graphics are mediocre. I mean, it will do them. It supports DirectX. I want to say version 12. So I mean, casual gaming, the kind of things you would download off Steam that aren't, heavy duty 3D type things. Yeah, it's okay. Puzzle games, adventure games, the strategic, games, RPGs, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's fine. I've seen, when you start getting into like Call of Duty type things, even if you dial all the anti-aliasing settings down, stuff like that, you're getting sub 30 frames per second typically. It's not. That's not where it shines. It's using the built-in graphics that come with the Alder Lake chipset, so it's just okay. It's doable, but if you're the kind of person who knows what a graphic card is and knows what one they want, then this is not for that. By the way, Green Scott Brown. Ed says, and just showing off some of the comics, your comics in a previous live stream, and how many boxes you have. Yeah, at some point I probably will. I gotta say, right now they're down in my garage space, and they're stacked on drawer boxes. You know, 5 high in library style shelving across the entire garage. It's about 60,000 books, all things considered. I have the prettier volumes, on bookshelves, around the house and so forth. But as far as the bulk of the collection, it's very much just in nicely labeled boxes all the way down. But at some point, I'll go into filing type things. I'm probably not going to do it right now because it involves filing, and I hate filing, which I am very much into getting it done as quickly as possible. All right, Mike says, with a gazillion background apps running, ComicBase is showing zero demand on my CPU. Yes, I have it open. Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense to me. and around 70 megs of RAM. By the way, when you look at the RAM usage on a task manager, and let me go back to that one right now, you'll notice that even with nothing much running, it's going to be showing 40-50% full. No matter how much RAM you have, that's just honestly, it's the way that Windows works. Is it wants to use as much RAM as it feels like it can get away with comfortably while leaving your other stuff enough room to breathe. So it will basically, when it's not doing anything else, it will pre-cache files to make future disk accesses faster and so forth like that, to kind of subtly load things into RAM. So don't get freaked out if you see that on your machine that it's using a fair amount of your RAM even when you're not doing stuff. That's, I hate to say it, but that's actually by design, and it's normal. It'll give it up, or at least Windows will give it up as it needs to do other things. So don't worry about that unless you're getting really low. Realistically, if you've got 8 gigs of RAM, you're probably going to do fine for almost everything. 16 gigs, almost certainly for everything. 32 gigs, definitely, unless you're doing video editing or 3D work, in which case you can never have enough RAM. But that's about my take on that one. All right, so let's see what else is going on. Let's see here. And Steve Dazzler says, all right, so for comparison, on my Win 11 Threadripper 3960 times 24 core system, same rebuild list uses 3.7%. Yeah, the CPU. Yeah, no, it's there's real desktop processors, and then there's this. I'm kind of impressed by how well this does, but it definitely is. It's, again, it's like having 4 decent employees working for you as opposed to having a full staff. Let's see here. Let's see. Mike Ware says, I looked up on Wikipedia and it's legit. I'm not sure. Not sure what he was talking about, Ace Magician or not. But yeah, no, I'm gonna say, I paid the money. The product showed up. It showed up with exactly what they promised me, and nothing that I didn't want on. Honestly, it was less loaded down with crapware than virtually everything I've ever bought from HP or Dell ever. So that goes a long way. Greg Heck says, ComicBase After Dark still scheduled for tomorrow evening. Yes, it definitely is. I'm going to make more of a deal about it. Thank you for reminding me. Due to the way Rumble works, Rumble won't let us schedule more than one live stream at a time, and so because we're streaming this stream over to Rumble, it wouldn't let me schedule the live stream one until after this one concludes. So as soon as I'm done here, I will schedule the one on Rumble. I will try to send out a newsletter with folks sometime tomorrow morning to remind everyone about. But yes, tomorrow night, please join us 8 o'clock Central. Grab yourself an adult beverage of your choice, and that's where things actually get kind of fun, because it's a long format thing that you get to be part of. Where instead of just me yapping on about things, we bring you all in and we chat about, honestly, whatever you all want to chat about. Certainly topics I would love to get around to is some of the new stuff that we've gotten in the works for ComicBase. I want to talk about some of the comings and goings over at Marvel and Disney and San Diego Comic-Con, because there's some stuff going on. But anything that's frankly on your mind, and we're doing it in Rumble so that we can say it without being censored. But this is just, think about it as a bunch of guys hanging out at the comic shop with adult beverages in hand. Just it's very different vibe. This is we're keeping it on the up and up, corporate chill, very safe kind of live stream. That one is more just, we're just people talking now. So please join us for that. If you're interested, send me a link, pbickford@humancomputing.com. I'll put up on the screen right now if I get rid of Gregory's thing right there. pbickford@human-computing.com. Send me a note and I will send you the live stream link ahead of time as soon as I've got it, which will be momentarily. If not, I will post it to the news at comicbase.com and invite people to do it tomorrow. But we can accommodate, I believe, up to 10 people at once. Everything else, you're happy. Everyone's, of course, welcome to join and just sort of lurk and watch the action. But if you'd like to be part of it, and we definitely would love to just chat with you, please let me know and I'll send you the link so you can be part of the whole thing. Greg also wants to remind everyone, smash the like and subscribe buttons. I should have my license as a YouTuber taken away right now because I did not, remind you that 16 times by now. But yes, do definitely hit the like and subscribe button on the show. And we have a dedicated thread on the ComicBase message boards for new topics, and as well as the link to Andre's ComicBase cover catalog, which is quite a thing. And Greg also reminded everyone, slap on the sunscreen, fire up the grill, kick back with friends and family, enjoy the long holiday weekend. I guess we are coming up on one of those pretty quickly, aren't we? Yes, absolutely. All right, so let me see here. And Brian says, after demo, I'm thinking about grabbing one of those refurbed Lenovo's as a personal PC to keep it work. Yeah, it can be. I'm actually, it's funny because this thing is so small and so silent. It makes you start thinking like, huh, what could I do with just PCs littered around the place anywhere I want. And honestly, the bigger brother of this one, I'm half considering just using it to replace our mail server. But everything from a home theater PC to running the video game system downstairs, not a bad idea. I mean, it's again silent. I mean, it does not have moving parts. It does not have a fan. It boots up in a couple of seconds, and it costs next to nothing. I mean, there's a lot to like about this thing. All right, and let me see. That's interesting. Brian Price says one of the mini Lenovo's that pop up in the link on the magician page for people who looked at this also looked at these. That's interesting. I wonder if that. I you gotta wonder what's going on there, but yeah, no, they're kind of neat. I have a soft spot for mini PCs. I think even though I do like building my own PCs and I enjoy kind of hot rodding them out as fast as it makes any kind of sense to go, there's a lot to be said for a nice self-contained thing that just gets the job done. Oh, by the way, in terms of to Richard Scott's earlier question about upgrading, this one in particular, it can accommodate more RAM. It cannot accommodate more disk directly. You'd have to attach it as a USB type of storage. You can't. Whereas there are other ones that are just a little bit more upmarket. So think I'm going to spend another $80 or something on my PC. Those ones have fully. You can pop in your own NVMe SSDs or your own RAM and upgrade them quite a bit. Obviously, the processor not so much. All right. Let's see. ComicBase TV is a fan of the bomb according to the website. Uh, I don't know. If it does, I've never heard it kick on. I mean, it's like I say, this thing is tiny. I wonder if it's a fan or if it's passive. But anyway, if so, like I say, the thing literally makes no noise. I mean, I wish I could turn off my my overhead fan because that thing is about 100 times louder than like I say, I've never heard the thing make any noise. So I'm 100 times 0 does not make sense. But anyway, if it has a fan, it's awfully quiet. I'll say that. All right. Wait, I think that'll do it for me for now. Thank you for listening. Pardon the technical problems on this one, but we're going to do something next time. And please join us. I will send the note out for the live stream for the ComicBase After Dark. Hope you'll join us on that one. It's something that I always think we're going to get in massive amounts of trouble doing that show. And it's always been really fun. So please join us there, and we'll see you next time. Take care. We'll see you then. Bye.